Hello everyone, Egg-Free Baker back here again with the next recipe in Mark Bittman's How to Bake Everything. This time I'm going to be making fresh fruit and nut bread. This recipe, there's a lot of variations that you can do. You can use lots of different kinds of fruit, lots of different kinds of nuts. In fact, Mark Bittman says that every time you make it, it's different because you can do so many different varieties. I'm going to do one with cranberries and pecans because I have those both on hand. To help me out a little bit today, I have my lovely assistant, my daughter Jillian. She's going to be working the camera so that I can use both my hands for the mixing and chopping and whatnot. So we hope you enjoy, and again, I'm going to be making substitutes for egg and also for some adjustments for high altitude. Okay, so I have some frozen cranberries from back Thanksgiving. Bought a big bag to make cranberry sauce from scratch. Didn't use them all because I couldn't find a smaller bag, so I froze them, which you can do. And what's great is that you can then use them in baked goods like what I'm making today. And you just get out what you need. And then I need a cup. Whew. And then that goes into a colander, and then you can just put that under some cool water and rinse them around, and they will very quickly defrost. And then you can also put them in the fridge and let them thaw, but this is actually a really quick way of doing it. So one of the ingredients that goes into this bread is some chopped nuts. I have some pecans here, but before I chop them to put them in, I'm actually going to toast them because that makes them taste so much better. And we use toasted nuts on lots of things like ice cream and oatmeal. And all you have to do, it's really easy. You put it on a cookie sheet with some foil. And I set the oven for 250. And then what I do is I put them in for about 3 minutes. And then I take them out and kind of stir them around with a spoon or just shake the pan with my hand. And then I put them back in for another like 2 minutes. And after that, I'm kind of looking for them to smell sort of caramelly or butterscotchy and really aromatic. And if they do, then they're good. If not, then I might put them in for another minute or two. It kind of depends on how many nuts are on the pan. But usually it only takes a maximum altogether of about 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, so the recipe calls for half a cup of chopped nuts and a cup of chopped fruit. So I toasted these nuts earlier, and I'm going to use my little mini food processor to chop them up really quick. I just threw some in there. I'm not quite sure if this is going to be a half cup or not, or too much, so we're just going to let it go. And see how fast it does that. And this thing seriously is like, I think somewhere between $8 and $10 at Walmart. So we can take the lid off and look inside. Don't put your fingers in there. I think I want them a little bit finer. I don't like big chunks of hard things like that in baked goods, so I'm gonna chop them pretty fine. And they also, if they're too big, they might sink to the bottom of the batter, so I don't want that either. I want them dispersed evenly throughout the bread. Look at that. That's much better. So I'm gonna take this off of here, take my blade out, and see. I think I've got enough. Yeah, actually, I did a pretty good job there estimating how much. So there's my half cup of nuts. You can stop it. Now we're gonna chop the cranberries in the same food processor. I didn't really rinse it out. I mean, they're all going in the same place, the nuts and the berries, so I wasn't really worried about rinsing it out. Same kind of thing. Just gonna pulse this and then measure it out when I get done. And again, these are thawed cranberries. Let's take the lid off and take a look. That's pretty good. Oh, there's still a whole one in there. We don't want it to turn into like mush, so I don't want to do it too much, but I think a couple more pulses. So yeah, that looks good. All right. This is going to be a little bit trickier to get this stuff out, but I'll grab myself a little rubber spatula here. Oop. Take my blade out. I think it's going to be about a cup. I measured it before I thawed it, so it should be good. Yep. So it looks good, nice and red. All right, so the recipe calls for, I think, a tablespoon of orange or lemon zest. So I have some oranges, and I've got my little little zester. It's got another blade, but that's too fine, so it ends up just like mushing the rind. So you just go along, and you don't really want to get, at least in my opinion, the white part of the rind, because that's bitter. So I try to avoid doing that. So I've got a couple oranges here, and I'm gonna zest them until I have a tablespoon. Okay, so the other thing that it also calls for is 3/4 of a cup of orange juice or fruit juice, or you can use milk too, but I'm gonna use juice since I zested the oranges. I don't want them to go to waste. So I just cut them in half and squeeze them on my handy dandy juicer here that catches the pulp, most of it, and the seeds if there are any, which there aren't, but. And then this thing is all like cracked, I know, but you probably can't see, but it actually has markings on it of liquid measurement. So like right there, there's a 3/4 cup line. So I don't know if I'm gonna quite make it. If I don't, I've got some just orange juice in the fridge that I can supplement with. All right, so the ingredients are in no particular order here. We have some grated orange zest. We have chopped cranberries, chopped pecans, orange juice, sugar, flour, cold butter, baking soda, baking powder, iodized salt, and the big star of the show, the ground flaxseed, which is going to replace the egg to make this egg-free. Okay, so we're going to use a 9x5" loaf pan, and again, I sprayed mine with Baker's Joy, which is like cooking spray with the flour in it. I only sprayed the bottom, had a little trouble there, only sprayed the bottom of the pan because I found that, and I've heard this from a lot of baking and baking shows, bakers and baking shows, that if you spray the sides of the pan, then the bread can't cling to it, and that actually keeps it from being able to rise. So I only sprayed the bottom of the pan. Okay, so I've got my dry ingredients in a bowl here. I'm just going to whisk them together to combine. It's flour, sugar. The sugar I reduced from a cup down to 3/4 of a cup for a high altitude adjustment. Baking powder was supposed to be 1.5 teaspoons. I took that down to 1 teaspoon. I didn't change the baking soda. There's still a half teaspoon of that in there. And then there's a teaspoon of salt. So just whisking those dry ingredients together to get them evenly spread throughout. Okay, and then for this recipe, kind of different for me for a quick bread, I gotta cut in some chunks of butter. So I already cut them into chunks. It's fairly cold butter, and you can use a pastry cutter like this one. You can use 2 knives. You can use a fork. If you want to go the really quick, easy route, you can use a food processor, which I do have a food processor, but I just, for this little bit of a recipe, I don't feel like it's worth it to get the whole food processor out and dirty. But some people, that you might want to do that, so that works too. But you just got to kind of work this butter into the flour mixture until you get kind of like pea-sized chunks. So I'm going to keep at this until I get it there. Okay, so now we're going to mix our wet ingredients. So we've got 3/4 of a cup of orange juice, freshly squeezed orange juice. We got, measure this out, tablespoon, I got enough here, tablespoon of orange rind. What else is going in here? Oh, this is the ground flaxseed mixed with water. Starting to get a little bit thick and goopy and gelatinous, so that's what we want. It's just one egg that's in this recipe, so it's just 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed mixed with 3 tablespoons of water, and we let it sit for about 3-4 minutes now. So that's gonna go in. And I think that's it. I'm just gonna grab, okay, juice zest and it, yep. I'm gonna grab a little whisk here because that's all I got. I'm just gonna beat that together. Of course, if this was egg, I'd want to beat it more to really incorporate it and get more air in there. But I'm gonna act like I'm doing egg, so I'm gonna beat it really good. It smells good. All right, and that we're gonna put that into our dry. And we're gonna stir that until just combined. So again, with quick breads, we don't want to over mix because that will affect the bake. This is very thick though, I have to say. I always get a little like, wait, did I not put in the right amount of liquid? Or did I put in too much flour? But I think it's okay. I think it's just gonna be a thicker bread, but I do want to get all those little bits of dry that I can still see moistened. It's pretty good. I'm just gonna double check that I didn't forget something. No, I think we're good. So the last thing that goes in here is the cranberries that I chopped earlier and the nuts that have been toasted and chopped. And we're just gonna gently fold those in because again, we don't want to over mix a quick bread. And also, honestly, with stuff that has cranberry, you can see how the batter is going pink here. So we don't want to mush those up too much more. We still want to have some nice pieces of cranberry in there. All right. That looks good. Okay, I'm gonna grab my pan. Oh. And get that in there. Like I said, it's pretty thick batter. So we'll see how it turns out. Just scraping the last bits out with my spatula here. And I'm going to use that to flatten it in the pan. So we get a nice even distribution of batter and cranberries and nuts. So I did have a little trouble there with my iPhone telling me that I was out of storage, so the video cut out earlier than I wanted to, that last little bit. I would have told you that I was about to put it in the oven at 375. The original recipe calls for it to be baked at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but with high altitude, I'm trying to also get a better bake by raising the temperature up by 25 degrees Celsius, so, or Celsius, I'm sorry, I'm a science teacher, so 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's at 375 right now, and I put it in for about 45 minutes. The original recipe says 50 to 60 minutes, but for me, I always like to check it a little bit earlier, because I found that sometimes my oven runs a little hot and things get done a little faster. Plus, I've got it at the higher temperature, so I'm gonna use a toothpick to test the center, see if it's done, and we'll see in a little bit how it turned out. All right, so it's been 45 minutes. Sorry about my telephone ringing. And I'm gonna do the old toothpick test. that looks, okay, we can't see that. That looks pretty clean. So I think I'm gonna take it out, and it looks nicely browned all around. So I'm gonna take it out. Okay, so it's been sitting for about 15 minutes cooling on the rack, and now we're gonna flip it out and see how, if it comes out. That's the important part. Here we go. Oh, did not feel it fall. I think it did though. Yep, there it did. There we go. So, looks pretty good on the bottom. You can see the cranberries there. I don't think they're all down there though, which is good. Right. Going to gently flip it over, right side up again. Yeah, and it looks pretty good. I think it has sunk a little bit in the middle. I was talking about that in the banana bread one, how that happens to us at high altitude, but really not too bad. Just a little bit of sinkage since it came out of the oven. It was pretty flat to begin with. But overall pretty good. So we'll have to wait for it to cool off some more before we can taste it. Alrighty, so it's cooled off enough. We are going to cut into it. I'm going to cut it right down the middle. It's still a little warm. Okay, get down there. Look in there. So it's still a little bit moist, maybe a little underdone. It did sink a little bit in the middle. You can see that. But we're going to take a taste of it and see how it is. Alright, so we sliced into it. We thought we'd put a little butter on it just to add to the overall flavor. It was pretty crumbly, so cutting it, it kind of started to fall apart, but that might be because it's still a little warm. But we seem to be enjoying it overall. Anything you guys want to say about it? Is it good, bad?
It almost tastes like a muffin, like you could.
Almost tastes like a muffin.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try some here. What do you think, Jacob?
Good.
It's good. It's moist. Tastes like Christmas, to be honest. And it's almost end of April there, so that's okay because cranberries are good anytime. All right, overall, I'd say it's a success. I might decrease the baking soda a little bit more to try and counteract the little bit of a sink in the middle, but otherwise I think it turned out great. I definitely recommend it. Again, this is from How to Bake Everything by Mark Bittman, and this is the fresh fruit and nut loaf.